we're starting at the beginning, Patrick, when you and I met. I have a very clear memory, but I actually want to hear it in your own words of how you met Carl Birman in court.
My day actually started the day before, where my ex-wife and I were separated, but we had got back together, although there was still a order of protection. And my ex-wife got angry with me and did a crazy thing and threw all this stuff around at me. And so I called the police, totally forgetting about the order of protection. And they came and they said, we have to take you. So I ended up going to the police station.
Oh,
And
so you called the police because she was making trouble. She was damaging property.
yeah, yes, basically.
Were you guys already divorced or were you guys still married at that time?
No, we were still married and
living in the marital residence.
we were trying to make it work. The kids were
How
young.
many kids do you have, Patrick?
Three boys.
3 boys. And what are their ages now today?
Today they're 33, 31, and 30. I have a very good relationship with the boys. It had its turmoil at the beginning.
Sure.
But basically I have a good
Okay,
relationship.
so you've set the scene, you've set the stage because you had forgotten that divorce court had already told you to stay away and not be in the house, but you and your wife were trying to make, at that time, she was still your wife, you were trying to make a go of it. So you were there, but then she had a meltdown. You called the police forgetting that you weren't supposed to be there. And the cop said, hey, you know what? We looked into this and we have to arrest you. So what happened next? That was day one.
It was the summertime. I was in a pair of shorts and an Izod shirt, and they took me down to the jail and they put me in a
Can we
cell.
say what town it is?
You can. It was Portchester, New York.
All right. So listen, I have an audience, Patrick, that is all over New York State, but everybody knows Portchester because Portchester is a hot, trendy city now. What they don't remember and don't understand is back then, Portchester was not as hot and trendy and edgy. And the police station and the court were in the rundown area. And it was a busy court, right? It was a busy, intense kind of environment. So when you say you were held in a cell, we're not talking about nice, luxurious conditions, right?
It was a hardboard with a jail toilet, and that was it. And literally,
had you ever been arrested in your life, Patrick?
Never.
And you're from a fairly professional background, middle-class background. So what was your experience being stuck in jail overnight?
It was horrible because the air conditioning was on. I was freezing. There was, of course, no blankets, no pillow, no nothing. I literally used a roll of toilet paper as a pillow. It was the most excruciating night I've ever had. I'll never forget it. It was that bad.
Now I want to jump in with my recollection, which is the following morning, I was in court and I had a bunch of cases because this was a time in my career where I was taking whatever cases they gave me assigned. And you were just a name on a list and I was told to just interview you. And as I recall, I had to do a financial thing to figure out if you were even eligible for a free lawyer or if you were going to retain a lawyer. And one way or another, we determined that you had spent a lot of money on the divorce and you were not going to hire a lawyer and you wanted the court to appoint your lawyer and the court agreed. And next thing I know, we worked all that out on a bench sitting about 3 feet from the judge.
Yes, we did.
And there was a jury box full of lawyers and a courtroom full of people. And there was the judge and I got appointed. And next thing you know, we were trying to get you out of jail and get you out of trouble. And I do remember that you had a divorce lawyer and you had a divorce case going. And at some point, I guess you posted bail, got out, and the charges eventually were dropped. Isn't that true?
You were the first person who actually listened to what I had to say. And we went to court, must have been a dozen times. The court never asked me what happened. I was never questioned by the court or the police. The police did the little beginning thing before they put me in jail. But other than that, we went to court so many times, of course, which was the first time we went, they made me go to anger management, which is a whole nother thing. And so the amount of time that this took was almost ridiculous.
And would it be fair to say that you were guilty until proven innocent?
Yes. In that situation, it was absolutely the case.
And I've been doing this work long enough to come to the conclusion that on the one hand, domestic violence is a very serious issue. So if a husband is charged with beating up his wife, then maybe it wouldn't hurt to give that husband anger management and make that a condition of his release just to ensure that the children are safe. On the other hand, to just automatically believe the wife or the girlfriend if they're not married and assume that the husband or the boyfriend is guilty is the old stereotype. Mr. Defendant, says the prosecutor, when did you stop beating your wife? And how can anyone possibly answer that question? It is assumed that all men are batterers. And when
Yeah.
I met you and listened, like you said, I always listened. It seemed to me that, hey, this guy is telling something that nobody has heard and that they need to hear.
Yeah. Every time we went, it just kept getting pushed. It seemed to me that they really wanted to make me guilty. And
Who's they?
the court, the district attorney, whoever your opponent, so to speak.
Prosecutor.
Yeah, the prosecutor. And they just kept making us come back because they kept wanting me to plead to something. And I was not going to do that because I was not guilty. I didn't do what they said I did.
That's just it. And I also say this to clients all the time, regardless of whether you've ever been in the criminal justice system, you don't want another thing on your rap sheet. You just don't want it. And particularly now, you must have been at least 40 years old. By that point, you had 3 kids. So I'm guessing you were a guy in the middle of your career. You have a reputation. You seemed like you were fairly successful in your business. And any kind of a plea bargain would count against that and it would hurt you down the road. And I'm always telling people, hey, this is the first plea offer that we've been given, but there's no rush, there's no pressure. I've been appointed. You don't have to worry about running up the bill because that's not what this is about. My job is to represent you and listen to what's going on in your life. And if you don't like the idea that they want you to plead to something, it is not my job to pressure you into pleading guilty. It's ridiculous. And I'm not saying what other lawyers do. I'm just saying this is how I was trained. This is how Carl Birman rocks and rolls with every client. I try and look at each case and find out what really happened and what can we do to help this person. So particularly in your case where you had never been arrested, never been convicted, and it sounded like it was just a confusion over how to work things out so the divorce could be resolved. I was not going to let you plead guilty. I would have stopped it. And I agree that there was a pressure because there's a heavy volume of cases and the district attorney is always trying to move cases through. But that's the beauty of the court process is that they give us that opportunity to even the playing field. So it ended up after multiple appearances that it got resolved. You did not end up with a criminal record. And finally, or one way or another, you got divorced from your wife. And would it be fair to say that both you and your ex-wife and the kids were able to move forward with your lives?
Yes, the first couple of years were tough. My ex-wife was making me out to be the bad guy, particularly through the divorce stuff where she was saying I wasn't agreeing to things that I was agreeing to. It was just one of the typical kind of divorce stuff that saying things that really weren't quite true and just causing grief. But once we got past that, the hard part of the whole thing was I only got to see the boys on Wednesdays for dinner and every other weekend. And then that was really tough for me because
Yeah.
we did everything together. I coached all of them in baseball. I was all of their Cub Scout leaders. They're very sports oriented. I used to joke from September until March, I was either on a court, at a rink, or on a field because with 3 boys, very active. And I was always there being part of it. When that happened, it was very difficult for me because even if we were just in the same room together watching TV, there was a connection being made. That was really hard. And what ended up happening is after a bit of time, I ended up having one of my older son live with me, and the other 2 could come and visit anytime they wanted, and sometimes stayed longer than the appointed time. And after about 2 years, my ex-wife realized we still had 3 boys to raise, and we came to an understanding. And I would say we've pretty much been friendly and at times more friends through the whole thing. But my relationship with the boys has been fantastic. I talk to them all the time.
Yeah.
My middle guy's getting married in September.
Congratulations.
Yes, we're very excited about that. He's the first one getting married, and they're all doing pretty well. And they know that they can call dad anytime they want, and I'll be there for them.
And it seems like you're doing well too.
Yes, luckily I met a fantastic woman, my current wife now, Leslie, and I would say the thing that's most different about her than my ex is that she wasn't trying to change me. Leslie just took me for who I am. We're very similar and we worked really well together. We had to. We ended up buying a motel and renovating it, running it for 10 years. We just sold it about a year ago. And so life is good. I can't complain.
Yeah, I get that. And I was really pleased when I reached out to you and you did express interest in being interviewed. A lot of lawyers would have trouble going back over a case from like almost 20 years ago and would be worried that this would just dredge up the bitter feelings from back then. But I like to take the long view. And as much as I enjoy being in the courtroom, I love finding out how people are doing years later. Because to me, this work is about much more than just clocking in and clocking out.
Yeah.
I'm a compassionate fighter. That's been my slogan and my brand. And I got into this work to make a difference. And it's very validating and reassuring to know from someone like yourself that I actually am making a positive impact. So thank you for sharing all that. Now, of course, this raises just a million questions, but it just makes me think about New York and how the law of divorce is set up in New York. I get calls all the time from people, should I break up with her or him, or should I stay together? And I'm that rare lawyer who is not pushing his own agenda and saying, yeah, we could put this into suit. And if you don't do it, you're going to lose out. And if the relationship is over, here's what's at stake financially. If you delay too long, you're going to be exposed financially. No, I am really soft and mushy deep inside. And I was a lawyer for children for over 10 years in Westchester. And I saw kids who were collateral damage of these bitter divorces. And it pained me. And so the bottom line I tell people is there's one thing in life that I've seen that's harder than marriage, and it's divorce. If you're thinking about getting married, think very carefully because once you take that step and make it a legal binding commitment, it's a lot of work. But once you're in that commitment stage, getting out of it can be worse than the challenges that you're in a relationship. Maybe you want to go to a mediator or go to therapy or what have you. And I don't really know any divorce lawyers who do that. I do practice in the area of divorce. I've been successful. I do a lot of work in family court. I've been very successful, but I'm not your stereotypical shark. And when I call myself a compassionate fighter, I'm equal parts compassion and fight. And so if someone says she means well, but I'm the better parent, but I'm going to remember that he just paid her a huge compliment, and I'll talk to her lawyer and I'll talk to the kid's lawyer, and I will not go on a search and destroy mission. I
Yeah.
know there's a way to have divorce without destruction. And if the parties were never married, there's a way to separate so that the kids are not ruined for life. And you just seem like an illustration of that because now one of your kids is getting married, and obviously they were not thrown under the bus by this.
No. And I came from a divorce family where got weird and everything. And I've always said if there was going to happen that I was always going to take the high road, never say anything bad. And that's how I approached it. And you were perfect for that because what I went through, even before the divorce, was really horrific. It gave me a real downer on the court system because no one was asking me anything.
That's just it. This is a topic I do want you to try and somehow include. Let's be realistic. We're talking as two men in a system which is, in your case, it was Portchester Village Justice Court. It was a criminal court, but it's also family court and it's the matrimonial courts. Unfortunately, the law in New York State is tilted. It is. And if a woman comes in and says she's being abused, the system is set up there to protect her. And you know what? That's probably right. That's probably a historical fact due to the history of men beating up on women and men doing horrible things to women. But the system may have gone too much to that extreme now, so that if a man says, hey, you know what? I didn't touch her. In fact, she was doing crazy stuff, and I called the police to try and calm the situation down, and we were trying to work it out. The system is now going to push the man into the role of being the defendant and now give the woman an opportunity to get all sorts of advantages that are just not right. Guy who was in that situation of feeling that nobody believes them because the system seems to be tailor-made for the pick up the phone and call Carl Birman because the first call is always free. And I will listen. I will listen and we'll see if we have something that we can work on together. The choice of a lawyer is really personal. And nobody should hire the first lawyer that they find. You may end up going through,
Yeah.
but you, the audience, may have to talk to 3 or 4 or 5 lawyers. The last person that I did a video with was a client from upstate New York, and she from a rural area, and she described having to go through multiple lawyers and calling all sorts of places till she finally found Carl Berman. Because just like you said, nobody believed her, nobody listened to her. And that was very different. That was a case where she actually was being abused. But upstate, rural communities in New York haven't gotten the memo. Hey, domestic violence is a thing. It's a real
Yeah.
thing. So it's tough, and each case is different. And it's just amazing year after year that people still go through these situations.
Yeah. And it's really sad because it doesn't have to be that way. There's ways to do it. And I like the fact that you say you're compassionate because I think a lot of lawyers, particularly tell women, do these things so you get an advantage. And I felt like that's what happened in my situation.
What I would say for a final thought is no lawyer can overlook what effect it'll have on the kids. Because no matter what position the lawyer finds the client, be it the husband or the wife, the father or the mother, that lawyer is not factoring in what the kids really want. And that lawyer is not listening to the children's authentic voices. And that's why the kids need a lawyer, because too often the parent's lawyer is just a shark and is just on a search and destroy mission to help that lawyer's client get an advantage financially or otherwise. And that only hurts the kids. You're the happy illustration of how there's a different way to do it that's more holistic and kid-centered and allows the parent to move on and allows the kids to grow up without being forced to choose. Should I be on mom's side or should I be on dad's side? What if the kid doesn't want that? What if the kid or kids really want to have a future where they're able to really be a child to that parent that they knew before all this happened?
Mhm.
So important. So important.
Yes. Yes.
Carl Herman really cares. And sometimes I get all emotional. I got to take my glasses off because it's just, we're talking about real children who then grow up and then they're real adults and we can turn around lives.